Thank you for taking time to reflect on what God is doing for poor families around the world. We're hearing stories this Lent from my book on poverty that celebrate the rich lessons we learn from the working poor. Though monetarily impoverished, they are rich in areas where I am bankrupt. And each chapter is a different lesson about life that I'm learning from them, and each lesson is illustrated by the stories of these remarkable people. I invite you to come with me to Zimbabwe, where I'll recount my time with Esther, a woman who has inspired me since my visit there almost 20 years ago now. Our introduction takes place in her remote farm community where homesteads dot the grass-covered hills. Each clearing offers home to one family, with a round mud building for the man and a similar dwelling for each of his wives and their children. Ancient ancestors would still feel at home here today, with no electricity and no running water. Only minor developments have occurred over many generations, except that is for the calamity of AIDS. A shallow river meanders gracefully between the lowest points in the valley, supplying its residents with their water for drinking and washing and irrigation. Esther greets me at a narrow point in the stream, bridged by her strategically placed stepping stones. And a dignified and intense woman, stylishly dressed in a two-piece suit and pumps, she confidently leads me across the slippery rocks as we walk up the hill to her home. And she points out the gravestone of her husband, who died just months after their third child was born. He'd been sick for a long time. Fear kept the family from naming his symptoms. But when Esther was diagnosed HIV positive, she knew what killed him and what would eventually take her. What she did not know was how much time remained to prepare her farm and her 3 young children to tend it on their own. Each morning at 5 o'clock, Esther begins her daily routine down the hill to the creek, and with a 5-gallon container balanced on her head and another 5 gallons in each hand, she hauls water to irrigate her vegetable garden. And over the next 3 or 4 hours, every day, she makes about 25 grueling trips up and down, following that well-worn footpath connecting her source of water and livelihood. To diversify her farm and increase her profit, Esther dreamed of owning a cow so she could sell milk to other mothers in the valley. But she never had the $30 to buy one. The bank wouldn't allow her in the door, and the loan sharks, they wanted 40% interest per month. That's when she learned about Opportunity International, and with affordable interest and no collateral requirement, Esther borrowed $30 for 6 months. And she bought the cow that would give her new hope. Each day, the cow produced the nutrients that helped keep Esther and her family strong, and there was enough milk left over to sell and cover her weekly payment. When the loan for the cow was paid off, Esther borrowed another $75 to reestablish her vegetable garden. She hired some women from the community to till the soil and collect the brush that would create an intricate fence that surrounded her farm to deter the animals and thieves. And finally, she planted kovo seeds and began fertilizing the green leafy plants that would sustain her family. With her youngest strapped to her back, she kept the other 2 children at her side, diligently teaching them how to care for the cow and the garden. They were not aware of her fate any more than they knew why their daddy had died. But there is not a person in Zimbabwe who hasn't been infected or affected by this plague. Life expectancy at that time was only 34 years. And communities like Esther's have virtually no working-aged men, only boys and the elderly. The few remaining men have gone to find work in the cities, leaving behind widows and orphans. And though almost all of the 25 women in Esther's trust group have tested HIV positive, they named their co-op the Enjoyment Group. Just prior to my visit, Esther's cow added to her enjoyment by giving birth to a calf. And as her farm grew, so did her hope. With her first 2 loans paid in full, Esther borrowed $250 to expand her garden and purchase a brood of baby chicks. Each week, our loan officers train the group how to improve their businesses. And occasionally, a health worker attends, instructing those infected with AIDS how to live productive lives. With no access to medicine, Esther eagerly absorbs everything she can learn to extend her life. For her dream is to establish her farm and somehow maintain her strength till her oldest child, who's now 7, can care for the younger ones without her. And with guidance from the healthcare worker, support from her trust group, milk from her cow, eggs from her chickens, and fresh vegetables from her garden, Esther eats better and feels stronger. But she also learns from her health worker that to prolong her life, she must minimize physical work and save her energy, which creates a haunting dilemma for this dedicated mother who begins every day with 3 or 4 hours hauling water up a rugged hill. So now she asks to borrow $400, this time to buy a simple foot-propelled pump and some hose so she can expand her garden and conserve her energy. She sees others in the valley who do this, tapping into the water supply that is just a few feet below the surface. I paused to ponder the implications of what Esther was telling me. A $400 loan could purchase and install a water pump and totally outfit this deserving farmer, so she'd never again have to fetch a pail of water. This small investment could mean the difference between life and death. Not for Esther, but for her children. Her hope and determination, they motivate me beyond measure, and I pledge to do all I can to fulfill her noble dream. I do not live on an island. Esther is my sister, created in the image of our loving God with immeasurable worth. But through no fault of her own, she was born in destitute Zimbabwe, and I in the wealthiest nation on earth. And it is this irreconcilable disparity that sets up another epiphany. Before leaving Zimbabwe, I visit Victoria Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. And as I stand on the bank of the Zambezi River and gaze at awe at that majestic force, I can't get Esther out of my mind. That gorgeous setting symbolizes Esther's innocence and the factors outside of her control that brought her to this place. I form a picture of her in the water. And through life's trials, she gets swept closer and closer to that deafening falls. And powerfully and irrevocably, that raging river crescendos towards the steep drop that ends in a blinding haze. And imagining Esther trapped in that current, there's nothing I can do to save her. But in my mind, I picture her calling out to me to protect her children and keep them out of that deadly torrent. You see, Esther innocently entered the water when it was but a gentle tributary easily crossed by strategically placed stepping stones. But quickly, streams converged, waters mounted, rains fell, and she passed through fierce rapids, and her place in that turbulent river is no more her choosing than is mine here on the secure bank. I stand on the precipice, gazing at the beauty of the falls, gently caressed by its never-ending spray. And the moist tickle becomes a trickle, and soon I'm as wet as she. We are sister and brother, created by God, equal members of our global village. But she is being swept away by the very waters that nourish me. Where is the justice in this relationship? It's too late to change her world, nor can I bring her into mine. But I commit to tell her story and do all I can to protect her children. So thank you for coming with me to Zimbabwe. Go in peace, brothers and sisters of Esther.
Esther, Esther, come and meet my sister. Somehow you've missed her. Esther, my blessed girl. We meet you at a stream near some rocks, where you cook and you clean and you wash, next to a grave where her husband now lies, and the same disease covers her eyes. In Zimbabwe, is this God's way? She never complains as she forces her way out of death. She shows me her home made of mud and sweat. Oh, Esther, my sister, how you cling to your sticks and your dirt and your pride, how the world pretends that you've died. Esther, oh Esther, oh, we bet she drifts down the stream for the falls. Soon you'll be born and your children will call out for Esther. Esther knows everything about being Esther. Yes, sir. Born into the world like I was born into mine. Oh, tell me where the justice lies for Esther. Look as she gestures to her pride that she fills with stream water by hand. She carries this pride on a bus to her land, next to a grave where her husband's been laid down to rest, in a grave that mirrors her fate. Only this one reads Esther. Oh, Esther. We bet she drifts down the stream for the falls. Soon she'll be born and her children will call out for Esther. Oh, Esther, Mama Esther, I don't know how I deserve to be king when Queen Esther knows everything about being Esther. Yesterday, Esther went far away. My sister now lies, and the same disease covers her eyes. All Africa's eyes. Esther.